Thank you for joining us on this webinar on accessing controls worldwide using Cscape 10 and OCS360 remote. If you have any questions at any point, you can pop them in and we'll get them at the end.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar. In this webinar, we will look at how to access your machine controls worldwide using Cscape 10 and OCS360. Here is the agenda for today. First, we will go over a quick review of OCS360 Remote in Cscape 10, followed by the requirements for this feature. The rest of today's webinar will be dedicated to demonstrations. We will look at the initial setup, the steps for deployment, upgrading systems in the field, and what online sessions look like in Cscape 10. As always, there will be a Q&A session at the end. To start, what is OCS360? OCS360 is a cloud service provided by Horner. It allows you to push data from your Horner controller to the cloud. OCS360 is a very powerful solution with a wide range of features, including up to 5 years of data recording, dashboarding capabilities, and alarm annunciation or notification via emails or text messages. OCS360 is supported by Alt Prime and Canvas series controllers, with Micro series support coming later in 2026. OCS360 requires a subscription per controller to an annual data plan. But note, everything we show in today's demonstration does not require a full subscription to OCS360. OCS360 Remote can be bought as a standalone product. What is OCS360 Remote? OCS360 is a secure tunnel through which we can access any of our controls over the internet. Instead of needing extra software, external gateways, or complex router configurations, Horner developed a secure tunnel framework for OCS360's cloud storage features. Today, however, we will use this secure tunnel for remote access using OCS360 Remote. As previously mentioned, OCS360 Remote does not require a full OCS360 data plan. Instead, OCS360 Remote can be purchased as a standalone yearly subscription for a much cheaper price than the full OCS360 subscription. Also, you only need one plan for an unlimited number of controllers. It is not per controller like OCS360. Per month, you get a 1 GB data limit, and if you use more than this, you can purchase a 1 GB data refill as needed. If you are an existing OCS360 cloud service subscriber, you can get a reduced cost for OCS360 Remote. Per month payments are also available. Next, what are the requirements for OCS360 Remote? As of the making of this video, OCS360 Remote is available for any Canvas controller with firmware version 17.3 or later, and for any XL Prime controller with firmware 17.3 or later. To set everything up, Cscape version 10.2 Service Pack 1 or later is required. And as previously mentioned, Micro Series compatibility is coming later in 2026. How will the OCS360 remote connection be established? All connections will be established directly from Cscape 10 using the connection wizard. This is the same wizard you would use when setting up a serial, LAN, modem, or any other type of connection. Now we are going to begin our demonstrations. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Let's start from the very beginning and sign up for OCS360 Remote. Navigate to Connection Wizard at the top of the Home tab. Here, we will select OCS360 Remote and click on Next. It's important that we are signed into Cscape with the Horner ID that we want to use for our OCS360 subscription. For this demonstration, we've created a new Horner ID that will act as a blank slate. This account has no previous subscriptions linked to it, which means we'll be met by this message asking us to please subscribe to an OCS360 remote plan. And this is exactly what we will do. If we click the provided button, we'll be met with a web page pop-up. After we complete the CAPTCHA, we'll be asked to sign in to our account and then select and purchase a subscription type. We will go ahead and complete this setup before continuing with the demonstration. We have just successfully created our OCS360 remote subscription. We can now start adding controllers. To do this, navigate to the row of icons at the top and click on the plus icon. we must assign a name to our controller. For this demonstration, we will name our first controller Machine 20. Then we select OCS360 Remote only as our communication mode. And now we must enter the MAC address of the controller. The MAC address is a unique identifier used by nearly all modern devices for network communication. Your MAC address will be exclusive to your particular controller, but every Horner product starts with the same three numbers: 00E0C4. It's for this reason that they are filled in by default in the OCS360 Remote Wizard. We are going to fill in the rest of our MAC address from our controller. Then we must check the Confirm MAC address box before we can add our controller. With our controller now added to Cscape, we have to move to the bench and do some configuration on our controller. But before we leave, we are going to note down our account ID seen here at the top of the OCS360 Remote window. Here we are on the bench. First, we open up the system menu and scroll down till we find OCS360. Then, we select Account ID, and here we type in our account ID. For the sake of this demonstration, we have already filled this out. Then, we simply go back and click on OCS360 Remote and enable it using the first switch option here. Back in Cscape, we click on the More Options button for our controller and select Enable OCS360 Remote. Then it'll connect, and this can sometimes take a few minutes, but in our case, we got a connection almost immediately. If we go out of this menu, we can now see that our controller, Machine 20, appears under Devices in our Connection Wizard. If we were to add further controllers using the same method, they would also appear in this dropdown. Now we have successfully connected our controller to Cscape 10 directly over the internet using only OCS360 Remote. We are ready to upload, download, debug, or do anything else we need with our controller entirely over the web. Next, we are going to quickly show you how to add controllers without using Cscape. If, for whatever reason, you can't access Cscape, you can instead head over to ocs360.cloud/login and sign in with your Horner account credentials. Once signed in, you can navigate to Entities and then into Devices. From here, you could perform the same setup process we just demonstrated. This OCS360 dashboard website is available to you with just an OCS360 Remote subscription. The full subscription is not required. For this demonstration, you can see that we added a second controller, Machine 21-TC, TC standing for Training Center, which is where this controller is set up. We can activate this controller connection by clicking on the Enable OCS360 Remote icon. And now, the device is searching for a connection. Assuming our controller has been set up correctly, we can expect OCS360 to find a connection quickly. But this can sometimes take a few minutes. However, once it does, our controller will be set up and ready to use. Next, we are going to demonstrate how you would configure a controller that has been installed in the field for a number of years. Here, we have a Canvas 7D controller. For the sake of this demonstration, we are going to pretend this controller has been installed in a remote location in the field for years. If we want to give this controller OCS360 remote support, we first need to update its firmware. But we also need to do this in a way that does not interfere with the existing program. To do this, first we navigate to the Media tab, and we are going to make a clone. Simply click the Create Clone button on the bottom of the screen. This serves two purposes. Firstly, as a safety precaution in case anything happens during the update process. But secondly, it acts as the state we want this controller to return to after the update. Once the clone has been successfully created, we can navigate back to the system menu and hold the system key for a few seconds. This will bring up the system recovery screen where we can select System Upgrade SD. This allows us to perform a firmware update from the SD card in our controller. Simply select Yes to confirm, and the update process will begin. This can take a few minutes, but once complete, we'll perform a power cycle and then return to the main menu. As you can see, our update has been successfully installed, but our program has been wiped from the device. To restore it, we navigate to the Media tab, and here we can click on the Load Clone button from the toolbar at the bottom. Our controller will automatically locate and run the clone file, and after a few seconds, the controller will be returned to how it was originally. With our firmware update successfully performed and our program successfully preserved, we are now going to set up OCS360 Remote. First, we need to make sure that our controller is successfully connected to the local network. On this screen, we can see our IP address, default gateway, DNS server, and so on, and they all look correct. This is vital, as our controller needs to be online for it to connect to OCS360 Remote. Next, navigate to the System menu, and if we scroll down, we can select a new option for OCS360 Remote. Here, we can enter our account ID, which will connect this controller to our OCS360 Remote account. To finish, we simply enable OCS360 Remote in this menu here. Now we are going to move back to our computer and check if this controller is now available on the network. Here we are in the OCS360 web dashboard, and we want to verify that our new controller is successfully set up and online. Looking at this list, we can see a new entry at the top for a machine 10-HQ. The device label for this entry matches our controller, and as we can see, its connection state is active. And the OCS360 remote symbol is green, meaning our controller is connected and ready to use. Now we're going to look at how to configure a connected controller in Cscape 10. Before we begin, it's important to give each controller a clear name when using OCS360 remote, as you don't want to accidentally upload the wrong program to the wrong controller. If two controllers have different hardware or I/O installations, then Cscape will flag an error before any download, but otherwise, you simply have to remain diligent to not get the controllers confused. With that covered, let's get into the demonstration. First, we open the correct program in Cscape for our controller. In this case, we open the Canvas 7 program because we are connecting to a Canvas 7 in the field. Next, we open the connection wizard and select OCS360 Remote. Then, from the drop-down, we are going to select Machine 21-TC, or Training Center, and as you can see, we have given it a clear name so we don't get the controllers mixed up. Then we click Finish, and after a moment, you can see we've made a successful connection. With our controller connected, we can now go ahead and perform any download, upload, or debugging that we need. Now, we are going to demonstrate some of the features of OCS360 Remote. First, let's look at troubleshooting. Just like if our controller was connected locally, we are going to click on the Debug Mode button at the top of our Cscape window. You might notice that it takes a bit longer for Debug Mode to begin, but once the connection has been made, it works just like a normal debugging session. All the normal information you would expect from debugging mode is displayed as expected. Information on function blocks, the status of coils and contacts, and more are all here. Next, let's look at Data Watch. We can open up the menu by clicking on the Data Watch button at the top. We are now watching a few values in our controller, and as you can see, we are getting live readings that seem to be correct. For the final portion of today's webinar, we are going to demonstrate one of the most useful features of OCS360 Remote, live programming mode. If you need to edit just a small portion of your program, then instead of doing a full download or upload, you can instead take advantage of live programming mode. In this mode, you can make changes to your logic and then use a special online change download to download only the changed parts of your program. This way, your controller keeps running the whole time and you spend less time downloading and uploading new code. To get started with live programming mode, we select the Start button in the Online Change Mode tab at the top. Then confirm by clicking Yes. Now we can edit our logic, and for this demonstration we will just change this contact to a normally closed contact, we could go ahead and add more edits, but once we're finished, we're going to want to download this to our controller. To do this, we click the Download Online Change button underneath our Start button. Now, Cscape will only download the changed parts of our logic to our controller. So we can see the process goes by very quickly. Then we are asked if it's okay to switch to the new program. And until we confirm yes in this menu, our controller will continue running the old program as it has been the entire time we were editing. So we will click yes, and just like that, we have successfully downloaded a new program to our controller. If we make a mistake or need to revert to the original program, we can simply click the revert button here at the top. When we are finished, we click the start button once again, and this will end live programming mode. And that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much for listening, and the Q&A session will begin shortly.
Okay, so as usual, the links are up for registration for the upcoming webinars, if you'd like to register for those. I don't see any questions in just yet on this topic. If you do think of any, you can get in contact with technical support if you want to follow up on any of them. Okay, I think we can leave it for there then. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.